first a little bit about what I've seen, about the power of microfinance, about the impact that microfinance has in changing people's lives. This is one of the clients of SEF in South Africa. It really represents, to me, some of the biggest impacts that you see in microfinance, the change in people. Not material gains, but the sense of confidence, the sense of self-worth, the stories you hear when a woman goes from not looking in the eye, talking quietly, staring at the ground, changing, coming out of herself and actually looking in the eye and saying, I'm a person, I've got some value. People talk to me now. I've got a lock on my door because I've got something of worth inside. I can send my children to school because they're not dirty, they've got clothes to wear, those sort of things. This is a picture from Foncotzé in Haiti of a client called Wilma and the change in her housing conditions over the time. So I'm passionate about microfinance. I've seen the changes that it can make in people's lives. We've talked about food, the impact, and really the economic impact and how that can translate into all sorts of aspects of people's lives. But I've also seen, in a sense, the dark side of microfinance. My formative experience in microfinance happened probably about 15 years ago now. Before I actually started working in microfinance, I was working for a British NGO in Kenya, an NGO that takes a very sort of holistic, integrated approach to development. I was working in an arid area of Kenya where the rains had failed 3 times in succession. So that means they have 2 rains a year, so a year and a half. We went out with the ActionAid. Oops, sorry, I wasn't going to tell you the name of the organisation, but anyway. We went out with the field worker from the organisation, from ActionAid. And we drove to a group of women. And basically they work, so they go into, they choose the particular poor area. They say, we're going to make a 10-year commitment to this area. They select the poorest people to work with. They then work in a very integrated way and say, what are the problems in the community? How do we address these? So we sat down, it was in the afternoon, and we sat down with a group of 10, 12 women in a semicircle, and we spent an hour talking about how bad things were. Livestock were dying. People were leaving the area because there was no food. They were going out searching for food. And we spent this time talking about what was happening. And in the meeting, some of the women started falling asleep, sort of nodding off, and they were really embarrassed, and they said, look, we haven't eaten today. We're tired, we're falling asleep because we haven't eaten. At the end of the meeting, I don't know how many people have spent time in Africa, but the women started putting their hands inside their bras. I don't know if people know what that's about, but basically that's where they keep the money. It's a safe place to keep your money. And they started taking out some money, gathered the money together, and they gave it to the field worker. Tick, 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 wrote it all down in his book, put on his helmet, jumped on his motorbike, ready to go. And I said, hang on a second, what's going on here? We're talking to starving women, and they are giving you money. He said, no, don't worry, it's the repayment for their loans. Look, 100% repayment, no problem. So I said, look, let's go and talk to them again. Let's find out what's happening. We went back and we talked to them and said, how are you able to repay your loan if you say you haven't got enough money for food? And they said, look, we have to repay our loan. If we don't repay our loan, we're not going to get another one. It's our credit, it's our lifeline. So I said, but where did you get the money from? And they said, no, we sold a chicken today. And that's the power of microfinance. As well as the change of people's lives, is the power to, in a sense, get starving people to sell food. So that's, in a way, that's how I got into microfinance. And I want to talk about what we can learn from that. And in a sense, the message is really, yes, microfinance is powerful, yes, it impacts on poverty, but not all microfinance is good. It's about the quality, it's about what it achieves, as well as what it delivers. It's not just about putting money into people's hands. And the impact of microfinance is not automatic. So I want to put on a sort of academic hat very quickly and just sort of talk about why microfinance is so powerful. Partly it's about the opportunity. It's about the potential that people have and the opportunity, the potential that it releases. The ability to save, the ability to invest alone in a business, the ability to access finance in different ways creates an opportunity. But poor people, by definition, are vulnerable. Life is risky. Bad things happen. It's inevitable, and if you're poorer, it's more inevitable. The poorer you are, the more likely bad things are going to happen to you. Illness, death, disaster, climate, whatever. And the poorer you are, the less likely you are to be able to cope with that. And that's really where microfinance comes in. So microfinance is partly about opportunity. It's partly about investment, a loan, productive use of loans, saying, let's invest that, let's create an opportunity, let's increase the standard of living, let's move out of poverty. But it's also about reducing risk. It's about reducing vulnerability and helping people cope with those problems when they happen. And how do you cope with those problems? First of all, you save. Secondly, you develop assets. Thirdly, you have insurance if you have a payment. Thirdly, you have access to remittances. People, networks overseas send you money. Foncazé, as I talked about in Haiti, has a very nice model, which actually they plagiarized from me, but anyway. It's the idea of a staircase, and we're talking about people moving up a staircase. So partly it's about investing. We always focus on credit and loans and investing money in businesses. So microfinance helps people move up the staircase. But if you move up, you can also come down again. Financial crises happen. People get knocked back. So microfinance is also about how do we stop people getting knocked back, or if they do get knocked back, making sure they don't fall so far. And as I say, it's these other financial services. It's also things like education, health services, linkages to other things which actually strengthen people's livelihoods, make them less likely to fall back. So Foncazé has developed this sort of model where they have programs for people at different levels. They have a program for the extreme poor at the bottom, which includes cash transfers, assets, so they give people productive assets, goats, money for businesses, chickens. They give them a lot of individual support and attention, which helps them to raise to the next level, which is called petit crédit. In Creole means small credit. This is a 6-month credit program where people get a loan, a productive loan, but they also get a lot of support. They get a lot of hand-holding. They get insurance. They're encouraged to save. After 6 months, the aim is that they get to the next level, which is the main solidarity lending program, the credit program, which also, again, links to education and training. There's a lot of there's support in there. And if they get past there, they can go to business development, which is the individual lending program for people with strong businesses who need more sophisticated support. And this is really, in a sense, their staircase out of poverty. It's about promotion, it's about opportunity, and it's also about how to protect people. So we come on to thinking about what does all this mean for an MFI? When I say not all microfinance is good, when I say that it's about how you do microfinance, impact's not automatic, what does it mean practically for microfinance? And what I want to talk about briefly is the idea of how do organisations deal with delinquency. We hear a lot about organisations that have very high repayment rates. You often hear 99% repayment rate, 100% repayment rate. It's astounding. Poor people are bankable, they repay their money. You often hear people saying things like, well, as long as people repay their loans, they come back for more, we must be doing good. What more do we need to know? If we think about delinquency management, if you think about what actually happens when somebody threatens to not repay the loan, how does that work? What is happening to that person? How does the organisation get its money back? One of the things you hear very often in microfinance is the concept of zero tolerance. So many organisations have a very strong focus on delinquency management. They have very, very strong incentives for their staff to incentivise getting that money back. So, for example, you have an incentive scheme where maybe a third of somebody's salary is made up of the incentive scheme. If their portfolio at risk goes above 2 or 3%, they lose the whole incentive scheme. So, fine. In a way, the organisation is saying to its staff, get the money back. We don't really care how you do it. We'll turn a blind eye to it. Just make sure that money comes back. So what do you see in practice on the ground? Often you go to a group-based organisation where they have a centre, where they have maybe 40, 50 clients making their repayments. And the loan officer will apply a policy of no repayment, no end to the meeting. Effectively, they close the door and they say, this meeting will not finish until everybody's repaid. And I've seen it. There's an organisation in India which now has something like 2 million clients which applies this. And they've had a 100% repayment rate. They've never lost a single rupee. And what they do is they say to the clients, you have to repay. So the meeting comes, everybody sits there, somebody doesn't have their money, they spend a long time discussing, eventually that person gets sent out. Go and find the money. They go out into the community and magically half an hour later they come back with the money. Where did they get that money? Obviously, I would have thought the most likely place is that they went to a moneylender to get the money. But the organisation doesn't ask. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes in groups. Groups have a lot of, they sort out their problems. The loan officer doesn't know. But what you start seeing is often where there's a high delinquency, you have a very high exit rate. So maybe 20 or 30% of clients leave between each loan cycle. Yet leaving is not necessarily bad. Leaving in high numbers often reflects problems taking place. So at the extreme, you have the situation I saw in Kenya, where problems are happening, there's not an awareness of why it's happening, and people are repaying the loans. The organisation thinks it's doing well. Investors think it's doing well because they have a high repayment rate, very low portfolio risk. But there's risks involved. And this is one of the things I want to highlight. Generally, when we talk about risk management in microfinance, clients don't get thought about. But the clients are at the heart of microfinance. The success of clients drives the success of the microfinance organisation. If we don't think about the clients, if we don't think about what's happening to them and how they're improving, we risk, first of all, damaging the clients. And there's an increasing move in microfinance towards client protection. Some basic factors such as don't over-indebt your clients. Be responsible in how you get money back from your clients. So it's just some very basic principles of client protection. And there's a campaign for consumer protection in microfinance which has been launched and is getting a lot of support internationally, and I would encourage people to look at that particularly. So that's the first risk. You risk damaging your clients. The second risk is you risk not achieving your mission. If you're trying to reduce poverty and your clients are repaying because they're being forced rather than repaying because their situation is being improved, and you don't understand that and you don't adjust what you're doing, you're not going to achieve your mission. Large numbers of people are going to leave, people are going to get indebted. You may be having benefits for proportion, but not as much as you could do. And the third thing is the risk to the MFI and the risk to investors. If your MFI is basing its practice on a lack of understanding of its clients, on a zero-tolerance policy which is forcing people to repay rather than encouraging repayment based on capacity, there's a real potential problem for that organisation. You may not see it immediately, it may not be in 1 year, 5 years, even 10 years, but the foundations of that organisation are not based on successful clients. And I would very much argue that social performance and financial performance need to go hand in hand, that to be a successful microfinance organisation, you need to build successful clients. So just some very quick practical examples of what this might mean in practice. So I've talked about the incentive schemes for loan officers. The common incentive scheme that you get would emphasise number of clients, portfolio risk, portfolio size. How much money are you giving out? How many clients do you have? How much money is coming back? An incentive scheme that balances social and financial performance, this is an example from Foncosé, doesn't just look at the number of clients, but it looks at who are the clients. So if you're an organisation trying to reach poor people, it doesn't matter if you reach 10,000 people and those people are not those people that you're trying to reach. You need to know what percentage of the clients are your target clients. So if you're trying to reach people below the poverty line, are they below the poverty line? It's a very common thing you see in microfinance where organisations say they're reaching certain clients, but they're actually reaching other clients. Obviously, portfolio at risk must be in there, it's important. A third indicator, which is a very good one that organisations are starting to use, is client retention. As I say, client retention isn't always good, but often you can say maybe 10% of client exit is normal, is good. Once it starts getting to 20 or 30%, you've got a problem. And thirdly, in Foncosé, they look at graduation to the next product level. As I said, they have this staircase. Their aim is to get people to progress from step to step. So they're incentivizing clients who graduate. So if the loan officer's client graduates, they get a bonus for that. And that's saying to the loan officer, our success depends on our client's success. You get rewarded if the clients are successful. So that's just a quick overview of some of the issues related to social performance in a very practical way. And I just want to highlight the work of the Impact Consortium. As I said, we're very much focusing on the practical side of how do organisations manage social performance. We have a practice guide that was launched a couple of months ago. We have a network of individuals and organisations, provide resources, training, technical support. And if anybody's interested, please visit the website. I also want to highlight Foncosé in Haiti as an organisation that I don't actually have a stake in, but I've been working with them over the last couple of years. And I think this is a very good example of an organisation that has a very holistic approach, is very much trying to balance financial and social objectives, and certainly would be an organisation worth supporting if anybody